Okay, 2021 has been another tough year, but you know what keeps us going? No, it's not the vaccine, it's JRPGs, and we've been treated to some pretty solid releases this year. But we're not finished, there are still a fair few due to make their debut before we move on to 2022. Oh, wow. And these are the ones that are on my radar. The Caligula Effect 2. We're starting off lukewarm, as this is a 50-50 on whether I'll try it out or not. The original Caligula Effect released in 2016 for the Vita, which was subsequently released to the West via Atlas in May 2017. There was then a remake of the game in 2018 called The Caligula Effect Overdose, which expanded the story and improved the visuals. This was released to the West in 2019, with an anime adaptation also being given the green light for 2018 as well. Now, the first thing that drew me to this was the stylized approach, which immediately made me think of a relatively unknown series that rhymes with Masona. But as I delved in further, it seemed like the original Caligula Effect had an interesting premise of its own, where people are placed in a utopian world to indefinitely live out their 3-year high school lives. However, there are a group of students who choose to defy this fate and look to escape back to the real world. Now, I never got around to playing the original, but I did see the odd stream here and there, where I also got exposure to the combat system on offer, which placed a lot of importance on combos, and apparently the remake improves on a lot of the flaws of the original Vita title. Plus, I hear that the soundtrack is excellent, which is a big plus in my book. So when I saw it was getting this sequel, I was interested. But, come a gameplay trailer last month, that initial excitement was curtailed a bit. Don't get me wrong, graphics are not that important to me with a JRPG, in fact it's what I consider to be the least important part of my experience, but when I saw the snippets of gameplay, it looked pretty rough. I'm not sure if it's the seizure-inducing arenas, the stiff character models, or the colour palette, but something just feels off, which is a bit worrying considering the game is releasing in October this year. Maybe I'll wait until others have given it a shot first and then I'll look to giving it a whirl myself. Tales of Arise. I mean, I don't really need to say too much here, this is arguably the most anticipated JRPG of 2021. Tales of Arise looks like a real step forward for the series as a whole, and it could even be a milestone game like P5 was for Persona or what Atelier Ryza was for the Atelier games. I'm not saying that it would make Tales of a household name overnight, but it could act as a game that brings a flood of new fans in who will thus become interested in the series as a whole. And everything I've seen in the gameplay trailers so far looks great. The combat appears to be a notable improvement over Berseria, the world looks amazing, and the character designs are compelling. And I'll admit it, I've watched that opening over 20 times, it's easily my favourite of the Tales openings I've seen so far. As a testament to Tales of Arise, it's one of only 2 limited editions outside of Falcom that I have pre-ordered, the other being the premium box for Atelier Ryza 2. I mean, I couldn't let that statue of Alphen and Shione pass by. And I'm not sure if it's Shion or Shione, but I'm going to call her Shione for now until I hear it myself. But despite my clear excitement, I will attempt to temper my expectations. I'll go cold turkey on the likes of Twitter and all that jazz until I can play it myself. Which is not too difficult because I'm keeping off Twitter in general anyway lately. That way I can go in with a neutral outlook outside of what I've already seen in those trailers, as I've already been bitten this year by another Tales game that the wide consensus said was a top tier JRPG. It's too bad it didn't have the same effect on me. I don't really want that happening with Tales of Arise. Shin Megami Tensei 5. And here's the other highly anticipated JRPG of 2021. I mean, I had to put this on the list, especially after having my first taste of what the series has to offer earlier this year when I played through SMT4, which I still have yet to do a review on. Such is the life of balancing a job with YouTube. Anyway, SMT4 was a great experience for me. It was a deep and thought-provoking, character-driven narrative, not to mention being fairly difficult in those early stages. But what really set it apart was that it felt completely different to many others in the genre I've played, whether it be exploring a dystopian world, the multiple routes, or collecting demons. It all came together to become highly addicting, and it's for that reason that because I now have a Switch on hand, I have recently bought the Nocturne remaster as well. From what I've seen so far, Shin Megami Tensei 5 looks to be more of the same that made Shin Megami Tensei 4 so enjoyable, with additional layers of polish. I'm definitely looking forward to this one. Astria Ascending. Moving on from the games that were a shoo-in to be on the list to a game that I didn't even know existed until 2 months ago. Astria Ascending is a new IP which is due to release in September 2021 for PC, PS5, Switch and Xbox Game Pass. And the first thing that stands out is the wide array of talent working on it. You have the likes of Hitoshi Sakamoto on the OST, most noted for his role in Vagrant Story, And it's being written by Kazushige Nojima, who wrote the scenarios for the likes of Final Fantasy X and a few of the Kingdom Hearts games. When I looked past that though and started to delve in a bit deeper, I found many aspects that were hooking me in, from the more mature characters to a wide array of customization. Add on to that a turn-based battle system that appears to be a homage to the games of old. And yes, I'd be blind to not even mention the hand-drawn art style, which looks amazing. I have a feeling it's not going to be for everyone, but it looks beautiful to me and it reminds me a lot of Aegis Rim with the flowing backgrounds. My only real issue here is the side-scrolling exploration. When I say that Astria Ascending reminds me of Aegis Rim, that's a good thing in one way because it's such a fantastic game, but the side-scrolling adventure worked for 13 Sentinels because, strictly speaking, it was still a visual novel at its core. Exploration of the world was not the centerpiece, it was the story that was important and how it flowed. Astria Ascending, on the other hand, is a full-fledged adventure, which means the ability to explore and find things off the beaten path becomes more important, at least for me. And it makes me wonder if the side-scrolling gameplay may limit the potential of doing that. Other than that, it looks very intriguing, and it's not too far away from a release. Edge of Eternity. Talking about exploration, I think that segues pretty well into the next game on the list. Edge of Eternity has had a noteworthy journey of its own to its full release in 2021. It began as a crowdfunding campaign back in 2015 which amassed over 4,000 backers, and it began development in 2016, going up on Steam Early Access for 2019. It's only in June 2021 that it got its full release on PC, and it's also coming to PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5 and Xbox Game Pass in Q4 of this year. So yes, I am cheating a bit here, as it has already released on the platform, but considering its due future releases on consoles, I think we can let this slide. Now, unlike the other games on this list which drew me in with their premise or art style, Edge of Eternity piqued my curiosity because of the potential for exploration. It's a single-player role-playing game, but it was giving me Xenoblade Chronicles nostalgia. I can't really explain it, but the scale of the world just felt like it lended to that game. There seems to be a lot of diversity in the world. You're rewarded for exploring the various nooks and crannies, Ys 8 style, and that's a pretty good foundation to build upon. On top of that, you've got an ATB combat system utilising a hexagonal grid and an intriguing premise for a story as well, with aliens coming to invade a medieval planet as the surrounding theme of the journey. The only thing I'm worried about with Edge of Eternity is that there seems to be a lot going on in this game from what I've read about it, and I'm concerned that because of that it's going to lack its own clear identity. In addition, during early access, the story was released in chapters, and maybe because of that lack of continuity, is that going to affect the overall flow of the narrative? I'm willing to at least give it a try though. Blue Reflection Second Light. From saving the world from an alien invasion to magical girls at high school, Blue Reflection Second Light is a sequel to Blue Reflection that released back in 2017, and it's developed by Gust, who I personally have a lot of respect for after loving the hell out of Atelier Ryza 1 and 2. This game is due to release on the 9th of November 2021 for PS4, Switch and PC, and it also has an anime adaptation called Blue Reflection Ray, which released in spring of this year, which I am also watching. Now, unlike the seemingly more heavy and gritty narratives of the games I've mentioned previously, I'm fully expecting this game to be very light-hearted. I'm not expecting the story to be emotionally gripping or anything like that. Instead, I'm anticipating a relaxing experience, which I do like to have from time to time. I like the art style, the premise seems positive, and the music, at least from the first game, seems decent as well. Add on to that the interactions between characters, which also seems to be a cornerstone of the game's core gameplay, and I'm looking forward to giving it a try. Monark. Rounding out this list, there's a reason why I've left Monark till last, as it's only due for a Japanese release in 2021. It only gets a Western release in early 2022. But I did want to give it a mention, as to be honest, this is one of my most anticipated titles. I put it up there with the likes of Tales of Arise and SMT5. And it's worth noting Shin Megami Tensei because this game is written by Ryutaro Ito, who worked on the original SMT and its direct sequel. In typical fashion then, it follows that tried and tested archetype: multiple routes, gameplay affected by the choices you make, puzzles and demons which can be customised based on your desires, which are defined by something called the ego system. Now, in terms of narrative, I'm not too sure what to expect, but it's set in an academy that is blocked off from the outer world, so I can hazard a guess as to what we're going to be getting here. On top of that, you have a free-moving, command-based style of combat, which seems quite similar to the newest Trails game, Kuro no Kiseki, which is opting for a hybrid of command-based and action-based gameplay. And no, that game is not on the list because a Western release hasn't even been mentioned yet. Overall, Monark has an engrossing premise, and from the admittedly limited trailers I've seen so far, it looks right up my alley. This one will definitely be added to the backlog for 2022. And there it is, 2021 plods along, but there are still many excellent looking JRPGs to dive into. And don't forget Final Fantasy XIV ENDWALKER as well, which is due out on the 19th of November. Yeah, it's not a JRPG, which is why I didn't mention it during the main list, but it's still an RPG and it is Final Fantasy. And I will continually shout its praises as much as I can because that game is amazing. Good luck with your backlogs!